Earl Graves, welcome to the Explorations in Black Leadership. Thank you a great deal for being here. Want to start off with some questions about your family. Tell us about your father. He obviously instilled a great deal in you. He had a favorite slogan, never rent, always own. What kind of influence did your father have on your subsequent career and your early life?
Well, first of all, my father passed away when I was a junior in college. And so at age 48, he had had a heart attack, literally working 3 jobs, which would go back to really your question. He ran a bit of a dictatorship in our house. Democracy was with a very small d. You have to study. There was housework to do. We had 3 sets of clothes, and you might have done the same thing growing up. You had your play clothes, you had your school clothes, and you had your church clothes. And if you got confused about it, that was not so good for you. But he inculcated, I think, a sense of you have to be successful. And that goes back to a whole West Indian sense of thinking. You know, within the West Indian culture, either you do well in the family or the family takes your name away from you practically. And they say, oh, that's that funny cousin of ours. We don't talk to him anymore or to her anymore. And so his parents came from the West Indies. He was an orphan at age 16 and actually finished high school at Erasmus Hall High School in New York and brought his brother up. There were 5 brothers. 3 of them were out of the house by the time his mother passed. His father would pass much earlier, and I never knew either one of those grandparents. And he helped his brother finish high school and helped his brother go on to a college or university after the war. That's World War II we're speaking of. You and I are at least young enough to remember that from the history books. But he and my mother was a very strong woman. She was all of 5'2". She said she was 5'3". I don't ever remember her being 5'3". But again, there was a sense of saving. There was a sense of, I remember moving into our first house, and they used to tell me it was impossible when you were 2 years old. You couldn't remember. So let's just say I was 2.5. But I do remember the night moving into what was our first new home. It was a brownstone home in Brooklyn. My father had tenants on the upper floors, and it always was striking to me. We owned the house, and yet the tenants had cars. Well, you're renting rooms or you're renting an apartment, you can afford to have a car, but we never had a family car. The big holiday for us, or the big adventure for us, would be if we actually took a taxi when we got off the subway close to our house. He'd put us all in a cab with my mom and my two sisters and 1 brother, and we'd ride home in what was then a taxi. And I was fortunate enough to live so I could send my mother around places in a limousine. So she lived long enough that she passed at age 86 a couple of years ago.
Now, your father was working 3 jobs when he died. What kind of example did this set for you? Surely he could have said, well, 2 will be enough, or 1 will be enough. I can get by on that. What did that example say to you?
Well, first of all, I didn't think it was that unusual. Again, and you know, you've seen the joke on Saturday, on one of the shows that's on Saturday night. I think it's in Living Color, where they have an example of the West Indian person who has 9 jobs. Again, in the West Indian culture, you know, you went from 1 job to the next job to the next job. One of our sons has a nurse that takes care of his kids, and she literally just works 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so that again is part of the culture. When he worked 3 jobs, I didn't realize that everybody didn't work 3 jobs. Now, I do remember him being home in the evenings, but if he had something to do, being a bartender at some of his employees' parties, he would do that. So he sold clothes on the side. From the company he worked for, they would give him clothes that he could bring home, and those that he sold, he would get the money, bring it back, and those he did not, he'd bring the clothes back. In addition to that, he was great at doing repairs around the house, and I'm great at doing that also, except I pay for it, but I'm great at giving instruction, as my wife says.
Now the clothing sales, you write in your book about watching him and not being told, do it this way, but learning by example. What did you learn from his salesmanship?
It's interesting you bring that up. It seems to me I always wanted to sell something. And if you ask me today what am I best at, I would tell you I'm just a salesman. The fact that we own several businesses and so forth, and where I get most animated and involved at the company today is what goes back to watching my father convincing some lady that yellow coat that she had on was just the thing that worked for her, even if it blended in totally against her skin. But I mean, he wasn't a charlatan. He was just smooth about the way he sold. And so when I found myself selling Christmas cards for my first really big people's bicycle, it wasn't even so much that my parents didn't have the money because they had given me bikes, but the fact that I could say to them, I sold 40 boxes of Christmas cards at $1 each, which is what I sold them for. and returned the money over to them. And I said, "No, I've got enough for a bike." Well, it was more than enough for a bike, but my dad always also took some of the money back of what I earned. And when I worked for Western Union, I would bring home my $15 for work, having worked every afternoon. And he would open the envelope. It was sealed till I got home. He would take the envelope, open it up, take out what he thought was due to the house, and give me back the rest. Right? And he somehow always came out ahead. It didn't seem to me it was an even division of monies.
As you watched him sell these clothes, were you conscious you were picking up lessons in salesmanship
Not
or
at all.
lessons in human relations?
No, not at all. And obviously, it's a youngster. You're not conscious of that. I think if you have a father around the house who's good in sports, you may become very good in sports. I became okay in sports, right? But I think
You
it was
were good in sports.
well. I enjoyed doing it, right? I'm still skiing now, and the question is how long do my knees hold up? And I'm ski racing. I put on a helmet on Sunday and Saturday out in Colorado, and I'm racing against people my age, which is next year I'll be 67. The older you get, though, the easier it gets to win because they give you more points for being older. So that's part of what happens, and it's possible too.
Now, you describe your mother as a, quote, much more benevolent presence in the household. What about her? What about her influence?
She was the anchor in the house. My father, he did not have to go away to World War II with 4 children. He was 4F because of that. But she was always the anchor when he was working late or staying out late, or he played cards also. So sometimes he forgot to say, "I'm going to be out late." And she was always there. She was the one that was sure we were going to go to Sunday school. She was president of the PTA for many years at the junior high school and the public school we went to. That one building, we went to it with my sisters, my 2 sisters, my brother and I went to it for part of our schooling, and then we went off to another school about 20 blocks away and then came back again for it to be our junior high school before going on to high school. But she was an anchor from the point of view of, she was really a moral compass in our house, as well as a lightning rod for all the issues that were key to who we were. And she was very strong about being race conscious, and she was fair-skinned, and she was so fair-skinned people mistook her for actually being white on occasion. And yet there was no one more militant about talking about who we were. I got to meet Mary McLeod Bethune. I remember saying that at her funeral. And I remember I met her, and at the time I was such a youngster. My mother said, "Now, what do you remember most about Mary McLeod Bethune?" And I said, "She was ugly." And I think I got smacked in the right-hand side of my face. I don't remember her coming back with a left-hand smack, but I remember getting a smack that I had to know more about her, so I had to write a composition about who she was, and I didn't do that again.